My name is Angela Orman, and at 29, I never expected to find myself in the middle of a full-blown family war. It all began last month when my beloved grandmother, Elizabeth Mayfield, passed away after a long illness. My father, Robert, her younger son, had always been the family's black sheep. He chose to become a literature professor at a university rather than follow the family's business legacy. He and my mother, Susan, a nurse, raised me with values that placed helping others above chasing wealth. Every Sunday, we visited Grandma Elizabeth's spacious, antique-filled apartment in a historic brownstone in Boston's Beacon Hill, a place that felt like a living museum and family time capsule. Everything changed when I was 13. My father died suddenly of an aneurysm. That's when Grandma Elizabeth stepped in and became my second mother. For the next 6 years, I split my life between my mother's modest apartment, where she worked double shifts, and Grandma's warm, elegant home. "You're like me, Angela," she would tell me as we sat in her conservatory. "You see people for who they are, not for what they can give you." Those words shaped me more than she ever realized. Elizabeth Mayfield wasn't your typical wealthy widow. She wore simple clothes, donated quietly to charity, and viewed her home not as a display of wealth, but as a vault of memories. My Uncle Paul and his wife, Linda, never understood her choices. Living in a luxury estate in the Connecticut suburbs, they constantly pressured her to live up to her status. When I chose to become a palliative care nurse like my mother, it bewildered my relatives. "You could have joined the family business, Angela," Uncle Paul said one New Year's Eve, swirling a glass of expensive cognac. "Why waste your life in a job with no ceiling? One call from your grandma and you'd be set for life." I smiled and replied, "I want to earn everything on my own, Uncle Paul." My cousins, Ryan and Rachel, both graduates of top business schools, found my decision incomprehensible. "But don't you want to be rich?" Rachel once asked, genuinely puzzled. To them, the idea that I could value something other than money was completely alien. As Grandma's health declined, I began visiting her twice a week, bringing groceries, helping with medication, or just keeping her company. We would bake her favorite ginger cookies, an old family recipe with a secret dash of black pepper only I knew about. During those visits, she shared family stories no one else seemed to care about, like how her grandmother had been one of the first female doctors in Philadelphia. "Remember, Angela," she told me once, "it's not wealth that makes someone worthy. It's how they treat others when they think they have nothing to gain. That's what shows real character." Meanwhile, the rest of the family only dropped by on rare, polite occasions. The first major fracture happened 3 years ago when Grandma turned 86. Uncle Paul called a family meeting and brought along a real estate agent. "We're talking about selling the lake house," he announced, referring to our family's vacation home in the Catskills. "It just sits there, and the upkeep is ridiculous." I looked at Grandma and saw her lips tighten. "Did she agree to this?" I asked. Uncle Paul waved me off. "She understands it's the practical thing to do." "Actually," I interrupted, "we talked just last week about how she wanted to spend a few weeks there this summer." Silence fell over the room. Then Grandma spoke firmly. "I did say that to Angela. I'm not selling my lake house." The agent quietly left. As soon as he was gone, Uncle Paul turned on me. "You always do this. You think you know better than everyone. But you don't understand financial realities." "I do understand one thing," I replied calmly. "Grandma should make decisions about her own property." That night, after everyone left, Uncle Paul cornered me in the kitchen. "Listen carefully," he said in a low, threatening voice. "You think you're special to her, but don't push your luck. Don't forget who built this family's wealth, and it wasn't your father." His jab at my dad stung, but I stood my ground. "This isn't about money, Uncle Paul. It's about respecting Grandma's wishes." From that day, Uncle Paul began what I can only describe as a quiet campaign against me. At first, it was subtle, snide comments implying I was manipulating Grandma. Hints that I was angling for a bigger share of her estate. One day, I overheard Aunt Linda on the phone with a distant relative. "Angela has that poor woman wrapped around her finger. The elderly are so gullible." By the next holiday, it was clear many of them had turned against me. At the Christmas dinner, Aunt Linda made a big show of arranging a family photo, accidentally leaving me out of the frame. Rachel, staring me down, spoke loudly about gold diggers preying on the elderly. I tried to be direct. I emailed them, saying I wasn't after Grandma's money, I just wanted her final years to be comfortable and on her own terms. Their replies, if any, were icy. Aunt Linda's was especially curt. "We all want what's best for Mother, dear." That Easter, the family gathered at Uncle Paul's mansion. I wasn't invited. I found out through social media when Rachel posted a stream of smiling group photos captioned, "Blessed to spend the holiday with real family." In one photo, Grandma sat in the corner, bundled in a chair she didn't recognize, looking frail and utterly lost. My heart broke. That night I called her. "Did you enjoy Easter dinner?" I asked gently. "It was fine," she replied, voice dropping. "But the cakes weren't like I like them. And Paul's house is always so cold." I couldn't warm up. "I wish I'd been there," I said. "I would have brought you a shawl." Silence. "You weren't invited?" she asked, surprised. Genuine shock in her voice confirmed my worst fears. She didn't even know I'd been excluded. As her condition worsened, the family formally began restricting my visits. Aunt Linda implemented a strict visiting schedule that gave me only 2 hours on Sunday afternoons, claiming it was to avoid tiring Grandma out. I often found others accidentally stopping by during my window, making any intimate conversation impossible. Still, I found ways to stay close. I brought food, photos, memories. The kind nurse, Marina, became my quiet ally. Sometimes she'd whisper on the phone, "Come now, Angela. Today's a good day. She's asking about you." The last New Year's before Grandma's death, I wasn't invited at all. I got a cold, clipped text from Aunt Linda. "This year's gathering is very private. She needs complete rest." Later, Marina told me that private meant everyone except me. So I left a gift at the door instead, a box of her favorite cookies, a soft blue cashmere shawl, and a photo album of the lake house through the decades. When Grandma passed away in April, I didn't hear it from the family. Marina called me in tears from the apartment. By the time I arrived, Uncle Paul and Aunt Linda were already making funeral arrangements. "Oh, Angela," Aunt Linda said with a sugary voice, "we were just about to call you." The funeral was a farce. I was seated behind distant relatives who'd barely seen Grandma in the last decade. Uncle Paul gave a long speech, praising her late husband's business acumen, their assets, their legacy, but never once mentioned her love of poetry, her brilliant mind, or her incredible ginger cookies. 2 weeks later, I was making dinner when I got a text from Rachel. A message clearly sent to the wrong group chat. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Arsenault and Reed. Mom says don't mention Angela." Then, seconds later, "Oops, wrong chat. Ignore that, please." But it was too late. They hadn't planned to tell me about the will reading at all. All night, I wrestled with my emotions. I never cared about her money. But deep inside, I knew Elizabeth Mayfield would want me there. I had to honor that. The next morning, I called off work, a rare move, and dressed in a simple navy dress Grandma had always loved. Respectful, not desperate. As I drove to the firm on Lexington Avenue, my hands trembled. In the elevator of the stately old building, I heard Grandma's voice in my head. "Stand tall, Angela. You belong where I wanted you." When the doors opened, I saw them all: Uncle Paul, Aunt Linda, Rachel, Ryan, even distant relatives. Their eyes snapped to me. "Angela." Aunt Linda gasped. "What are you doing here?" I lifted my chin. "I came for the reading of Grandma's will." Uncle Paul stepped forward, blocking me. "You weren't invited. This is for family." "I am family." "You know what he means," Rachel cut in. "Family who respected her wishes, not those who tried to influence her." Before I could respond, the lawyer entered. "Everyone here for the estate of Elizabeth Mayfield?" Then he noticed the tension. "Is there a problem?" Aunt Linda stepped forward, all smiles. "Mr. Arsenault, there's been a misunderstanding. Angela shouldn't be here. We already handled most of the distribution." He frowned. "I'm afraid that would be a serious misunderstanding, Mrs. Donovan. Nothing was to be distributed before this meeting." He turned to me. And as for Ms. Angela Orman not being invited, he opened a folder and adjusted his glasses. That would be quite odd, considering the contents of the will. What do you mean? Uncle Paul demanded. I mean, Mr. Arsenault said, eyes scanning the room, her name is the only one in it. I, Elizabeth Mayfield, being of sound mind and clear memory, hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. After much reflection and careful observation of my family over recent years, I have made decisions regarding the distribution of my estate. I bequeath all of my possessions, both movable and immovable, including my apartment on Beacon Hill, my lake house in the Catskills, all financial accounts, investments, and personal belongings to my granddaughter, Angela Orman. A collective gasp filled the room. Rachel dropped her glass of water. It shattered across the hardwood floor. This is illegal, Uncle Paul thundered, his face turning crimson. We will contest this. She was not of sound mind. Aunt Linda shrieked. Mr. Arsenault, the lawyer, shook his head calmly. I would advise against that. Elizabeth anticipated this reaction, and she took every precaution, he continued. She underwent comprehensive cognitive evaluations by 3 independent neurologists months before her passing. All confirmed she was fully capable of making these decisions. He then produced a sealed envelope. Angela, your grandmother asked me to give this to you. With trembling fingers, I opened it. My dear Angela, if you are reading this, then I have already passed. And you've just learned you are my sole heir. I have watched the family for years. Paul only visited to discuss my assets. Linda arrived with expensive gifts, but never stayed for real conversation. The others, besides you, called only on holidays. But you, Angela, showed up because you wanted to be with me. You listened to my stories, baked according to my recipes, and treated me like a person, not a ledger. The past years were a test, and you alone never failed it. With love and unwavering confidence in you, Grandma Elizabeth. Tears rolled down my face. Around me, the room turned chaotic. Mr. Arsenault raised his voice. There is more you should know. Elizabeth documented everything. He opened another folder. She kept meticulous logs of visits, conversations, and behavior. 2 years ago, she installed a security system in her apartment that tracked comings and goings. She preserved texts and emails. She even legally recorded some phone calls. Furthermore, she discovered items were removed from her home without permission, so she made a complete inventory, including photographs. Ridiculous, Aunt Linda scoffed, though her tone had lost confidence. The truth, Mr. Arsenault said, raising an eyebrow, is that this antique bronze lamp from her study is now in your living room. That diamond bracelet was seen on Rachel at last month's charity gala. And the watercolor views of the lake house were photographed in Paul's office. They were stunned into silence. There are conditions in the will, the lawyer continued. Any items removed from Elizabeth Mayfield's property must be returned within 30 days. Failure to do so will result in legal action. Uncle Paul finally exploded. Pointing at me, he yelled, "It's all your fault. You manipulated a vulnerable old woman. You turned her against her own family." I thought back to our evenings together, our talks about books, how happy she was when I brought her favorite ice cream just because. "No, Uncle Paul," I said quietly. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing. She always did. The weeks that followed felt like a nightmare. Uncle Paul's parting shot in that office was, "This is not over." And he was right. The very next morning my phone exploded with calls, first Aunt Linda, then Rachel, then distant relatives I barely knew. All demanding, accusing, bargaining for whatever they thought they were entitled to. I stopped answering unknown numbers, but voicemail filled with threats and pleas. Angela, Aunt Linda left. Do the right thing. Your grandmother wasn't herself. We all know it. Call me. Hey, it's Ryan, came another. That silver tea set was promised to me years ago. I can forward you her message about it. By week's end, the harassment spilled onto social media. Rachel posted thinly veiled accusations. Amazing how some people pretend to care about family just to get what they want. The truth always comes out. I changed my phone number and deactivated my social accounts, but the stress took a toll. Sleepless nights. Headaches. My hospice supervisor noticed small errors creeping into my care. She insisted I take a week off. During that week, I finally walked into the home that once belonged to my grandmother. It was now mine. The rooms, still scented with her perfume, felt eerily hollow. Shelves had glaring gaps. Antique clocks were gone. Crystal figurines were missing. Her jewelry box lay almost empty. They hadn't taken just valuable items, they stole memories. Her Orenburg shawl, a lace heirloom made by her mother, the collection of souvenir spoons from her travels with Grandpa. I collapsed onto the bed, the handmade quilt gone, and sobbed until my tears were dry. Then, deep inside her closet, I found a small safe I never knew existed. Using her birth date, it opened. Inside were a leather-bound journal, several USB drives, and a handwritten note. For Angela, use if needed. The journal detailed everything, every visit, every conversation, every item borrowed and never returned. The USB drives held copies of emails, photos, and even voice recordings. One recording, taken 6 months before her death, was chilling. Grandpa's casino recording. Actually, Paul dropped by for an hour today, trying to convince me to sell the lake house. I refused. He called it an underperforming asset. What he doesn't realize is that I had a professional appraisal done last month. It's worth nearly double what we paid for it. He's always failed to understand the difference between price and value. Another recording. Linda and Rachel stole her diamond bracelet. Angela's voice hears Rachel heading upstairs while Linda distracts her. Angela added photos of the empty jewelry tray and noted, "I wonder, do they realize the upstairs hallway now has cameras?" Armed with this mountain of evidence, I contacted Mr. Arsenault again. "We might have to fight," I told him. "She planned for this. I'll connect you with Zoe Daniels, a litigation attorney who specializes in will contests and inheritance theft." Zoe Daniels was a formidable lawyer in her 50s, with a reputation for ruthless effectiveness. Reviewing Grandma's documentation, she finally smiled, the first warm expression I'd seen in her office. "Your grandmother didn't just build a case," Zoe said. "She built a fortress. This is one of the most documented cases I've ever seen." Our legal strategy. File an official inventory of missing items with photos and current valuations. Serve formal demands for return with strict deadlines. File a motion to dismiss Paul's challenge, attaching recordings and evidence. Subpoena testimony from Marina, the caregiver, and hospice staff, who could confirm I visited 64 times last year, while Paul came 7 times and Linda 9 times. Zoe arranged a family meeting in her office. One by one they arrived, Paul with his anxious lawyer, Linda avoiding eye contact, Rachel and Ryan feigning boredom. "Thank you all for coming," Zoe began. "We requested this meeting to clarify issues around Elizabeth Mayfield's estate." Paul's lawyer immediately launched into a rehearsed statement about undue influence. Zoe let him finish, then pressed a remote. On a big screen appeared Grandma herself on video. "My name is Elizabeth